Okay, I wanted to do a quick scene featuring a similar composition as the previous several videos featuring this kind of nighttime sky type thing, and then some darker silhouettes in the foreground, just to create this kind of near and kind of far infinity type of combination working in here. It's very dramatic and very fun to do. Okay, so I'm going to be doing a quick scene, so I'm not going to be doing a large format. I'll be doing a standard card size. This will be a quarter page, 4¼ by 5½ here. And let's just do this in a blue colored scheme. I think a lot of people have a nice range of blues going from kind of light, medium, and dark. You can mix and match your pads. This would be an example of light, medium, and dark in the Memento range. Okay, Summer Sky, Bahama Blue, Danube Blue. They probably have other ones as too. This is a Marvy one right here with a Salvia, a blue, I don't know, Prussian blue, there's Caribbean blue. You know, like I said, you can mix and match. You can mix Memento and Marvy and Distress Inks and whatever, you know, you might have, okay? But let's just keep this one simple and moving here. I would say if you're going to stamp along with me, just grab your darkest pad. And I'm going to use Starbirth here. You can use Milky Way, you can use Star Cluster, the nebula with star, whatever. Kind of a deep space image. You don't have to use that one either. You can just, what we use in our cloud, you can fill up an entire sky with just clouds too. And there was a similar composition that I did using that one not too long ago with your darker foreground images and whatnot. Okay. All right, so this is going to fill up a large portion of this scene. You can stamp it wherever you want. You can stamp it higher, side, lower, whatever, okay? Doesn't really matter. I'll go middle, but I'm going to give this scene a little bit more kind of a dynamic nature, so why don't I stamp it on an angle, okay? It kind of tends to tip things on edge a little bit and get the movement, kind of the visual movement going, I don't know, side to side, I guess you can say. All right, now, depending on what size of image you're using, mine's a pretty big one here with a 3 by 4½, you know, size image here, but so I'll still have some space in here, especially if I've stamped it on the diagonal. And what you're going to do with these sky images is you're going to overlap, change the angle a bit so that when you stamp into another sibling image, it will thus blend in a nice seamless aspect. In other words, just don't kind of go like a brick, like you're stacking bricks or something like that, and you're just going edge to edge. If you do that, then the edges of the stamp will be much more apparent where one stamp ends and the other one begins. Okay, now if you start getting a little bit brick-like, you know, stacks, don't worry about that because we're going to blend in so many colors in this anyways. But this kind of overlapping just kind of gives us a little bit of a head start in terms of the blending, the seamless blending of imagery. Okay, after we do that, you can pause this video if you're stamping along with me. But I'll just keep moving here. You can always pause, like I said. I stamped up my cloud, or I'm going to stamp up my cloud in the same blue that I did with this image, and here I'll still stay fairly dark. I could stamp all these images out lighter, but just in terms of this lesson here, and just going for expediency, I'm going to stamp it out in the same color, and I'm using the same concept if you have this stamp right here. And if you don't know how to use it, it's a good idea to go on to the 018E Cloud Cumulus stamp module, and then I have a bunch of videos underneath the stamp on the Stampscapes website where you can see this used, and I have a dedicated video just on the usage of that cloud right here. But basically you're just changing the angle and you're overlapping, okay? Don't rock this like this, you know, when you're stamping it out, otherwise you'll get the edges too prominent. Or you can just kind of mop them off like this, like I do in a lot of videos, and then stamp it out, and the edges will become much more seamless inherently because you're stamping them out lighter. Okay, so on the scene right here, just in general, when I start blending my colors in, I think I'm going to retain some of the lightness of some of these brightest of or largest of star formations, and I want some of my clouds to look like they're reflecting some of that light in there, okay? So I'm going to keep this. It's going to get fairly dark, but let's retain some of the lightness, okay? So we have some contrast moving. Okay, I'm using a color box stylus tool here, okay? And I'm just blending in some inks. Now see, a lot of times when people see the end result, if they haven't seen this process done before, they will always ask you, how did you get that light in there? They think you've done some kind of bleaching process, but when we're starting off with a white piece of paper, and if we want something to stand out light, all we have to do is just not take it dark, right? So no additional process is needed. You just do selective coloring here, as opposed to general coloring over the whole thing, okay? Now look at this. In the cloud right here, you can see there's darker portions of this cloud, right? So what I do is I just reiterate that with this, okay? And I'm using glossy cardstock, but I'll do this scene on another video with matte cardstock, but it would be kind of be the same way. The matte cardstocks are going to be absorbing the ink a little bit faster, so you just need to use a little bit more ink when applying. Okay, but see what that does? The top portions of that cloud remain a little bit light. I'm not being real careful, so some of it got a little bit darker, but I don't care, all right? Especially for a scene like this, I'm going to be using some splatter painting techniques. All right, now let's say you don't have a sponge applicator or something like that. You certainly don't. It doesn't require that. This is just a wadded up paper towel, right? You see that right there? And you can do something like this. Okay, let me just go on with this. And here I'm coloring, okay, this like so. This works pretty good as well. You'll probably end up with some inky fingers if you do this the entire way, but it doesn't work too bad. You're losing a lot of ink on something like this too, because it's, you know, absorbing into this paper towel, you know, but it doesn't look too bad, right? Now let's go on to my next color. Let's go to the medium memento. Let me just stick with this one right here, just to say that we don't have to be locked into certain types of applicators or lines of ink or whatever. The concept here is the same, okay? Now watch this. I'm just adding this color in. Now retain your light in there, okay? Meaning don't tone it out. If you do tone it out on accident, so be it, okay? But maybe when you get to your darker colors, maybe just be a little bit more careful with those ones, okay? So that if you get too dark on a certain star and you don't have the white anymore, I don't. You know, I have it more on this one right here, but this one right here I came over with a little bit of blue. But when I move into my darker blue, you know, if I got too dark in here with my medium blue, then just avoid this area with the, you know, your darker colors, and it'll seem lighter by contrast, the things that you leave, okay? Here comes the Danube blue. People are asking me, what tool are you going to use? Because ClearSnap, when is going closing shop, and they're not, you know, they're not going to be making these anymore. So I said I'm going to go back to things like cosmetic sponges and whatnot. I mean, this is going way back, you know, in time right here. But you notice how things are getting a little bit darker. I'm just kind of working around my illuminated areas, and by illumination it's just simply defining that with the use of some darker tones, okay? Alright, so if you're using sponges, you can kind of build up your colors a little bit more. One of the things that people kind of respond to a lot in some of my finished pieces is that kind of that glowing kind of aspect of colors, okay? Now, one of the things that I probably do more than others is a lot of times when people see something colored, there's like one application, okay, if there's this area to be filled in, they'll fill it in with one color, and then they might put a little bit of a darker tone around it or something like if you're kind of putting a vignette on something. But with me, I just use probably a little more color than they're probably used to seeing. But when you're using layered dye-based colors, okay, let me do this on one half of this card right here, okay? And let's see if we can see the difference. Okay, so this is a Caribbean blue, right? So this will be the fourth blue that I've laid on top of this, right? Now it's lighter, so we don't see a lot of Caribbean blue, like right in these darkest of areas, okay? But let's see here. Can you see the difference between this blue over here and this blue? Okay, so that's where you get kind of that additional kind of pop in terms of intensity and this glowing aspect. You know, we're just, you know, we're doing this on white pieces of paper, so we don't have light in the scene, but we can kind of give the illusion of light through the use of value, okay? So meaning I've left some things lighter than others, so we have that. But it's also kind of having that glowing kind of aspect of things. In color theory, if you put two analogous colors next to one another, this one goes into a slight green, but like a blue and a green together. If you put those two colors right next to each other, that intersection between the two create a color glow, okay? So that's what we're doing here, except we're not intersecting. We're actually, you know, layering one color over the next, and it's not physically mixing, you know, on this paper right here. It's just like you're putting one color over the other. So we're creating this kind of color glow happening within the piece. Okay, see how rich that looks right there, and see how beneficial, you know, some like one extra color can be sometimes. Now let's go with an additional tone. Let me go back to this just for those of you that might be using something like this. Okay, this is a Prussian blue, and I'm going with that same dark blue that I stamped out my images in. Okay, now when you get real dark, just kind of stay real perimeter oriented like this. I hope some company does not come out with some sort of repackaged paper towels or something like that, saying these are like the magic blending cloths or something like that. I see that happening a lot, you know, with repurposed types of products, but they just name it something, and it suddenly becomes something else. Okay, see how that goes? See how much lighter those stars are looking now that I've taken the area and made it darker. Okay, you can you can keep going too. You know, I usually go all the way to black, so let's take a black right here. Perimeter oriented, okay. I mean, you could take it in there a little bit farther if you want to, but just in general, I'm kind of putting like a vignette around the perimeter of this scene. Okay, now I see why I don't use paper towels as much. My shoulder is starting to get a little bit tired. Here, let me use less pressure. I haven't been doing like this type of thing since like 30 years ago, you know. This is a little bit more ergonomic, you know, than this, because I'm having to kind of grab this a little bit more. So I need to adjust my kind of my positioning of my arm too. Maybe I'll do this right here. I'll just kind of use this little kind of rubbing motion like this. You want to be, you know, you want to kind of be mindful of your kind of application method, kind of how you're sitting and things like that. Keep everything nice and ergonomic, you know, so you don't develop kind of a strain anywhere. And that's important. I think when you're doing things kind of in a nice ergonomic fashion, I think the end results seem a little bit more kind of graceful as well, because you're not fighting some sort of kind of awkward, you know, movement or whatnot. Anyways, you see that, how that happened right there? Paper towel, right? I know we like our products, though. I'm the same way, too. So sometimes when people, you know, I'm doing these types of things like this, they want that exact thing. And I get it. Like I said, I'm the same way, too, a lot of times. But you can just kind of make do with things, and I totally believe in that. Okay, I'm looking for my... oh, here we go. I'm looking for this paintbrush here. Okay, this is really stiff. I didn't wash it out, but just an old paintbrush. And I'll be applying some bleed-proof white here. If you don't have this, some gel pens will work just great too. So let me go wash this off and I'll be right back. Okay, now at this point in time in the scene too, if you wanted to tweak this color scheme, this blue is a good foundation. If you want to kind of go in the green tinges, you can bring in, you know, some sort of pale green or something like that if you have it. This one went into the purple kind of color scheme right here, so you can add a pink on top of this or something like that. And add a tinge of another color scheme. This one, of course, is, you know, a completely different color scheme right here, but this is kind of what we're going after. If you haven't seen those previous videos on that, here, let me, instead of just saying it here, I'll give you an example of kind of tweaking the color scheme around a little bit. Let me see. Let me get a fresh ink applicator here, right? Okay, let's wad this up right here. And this is using a, this is a rosemary. I keep forgetting if that's the bubblegum pink or if that's the rosemary there. Okay, all right. So there we go, right? Okay, now let me kind of blot that off a little bit, but let's take a look and let's see if we can add in a tinge of another kind of color scheme. I start oftentimes in the lighter areas, or I'm in the darker areas, sorry. And then when I kind of rub it into some of those lighter areas, it reads just as more pure pink, although my scene got pretty dark right here with that blue, so. Okay. See that right there? It's kind of just tweaking the color scheme around a little bit wherever it's applied. Again, I have to get a little bit of hold. I haven't been doing this type of thing. It is actually physically blending with the media there that's already been laid down, so it is mixing it a little bit on the page. Where the sponges, it would just kind of be applying it over the top, so. I knew there was a reason I used the sponges, but, you know, if you cannot get, you know, those sponges or something like that, or if you don't have some other kind of thing, I mean, you can get away with this, right? I mean, this doesn't look too bad. And it was predominantly done with, you know, that paper towel there, so. Don't feel you can't do it. Now, if you don't have inks or something like that, yeah, it gets a little bit harder, I guess, but. All right, bleed-proof white. Okay, it's an opaque white watercolor paint, okay? Now, let me see, I've used this a couple times recently, so I don't think I need to reconstitute it, but often, you know, most of the times I need to add a little bit of water to it. Okay, so this is going to be done in a splatter painting technique. If you don't have this, you don't have to put this down here, but it just kind of creates that extra layer of texture. And I think visual interest, you know, the more texture you have, the more kind of a range of values and hues and brightness and all that type of thing going on. It's a lot of fun. Okay, so I'm just going to take this and with this type of motion, you know, pulling back on this. Sometimes I don't know where it's going to go. Sometimes it goes down here, sometimes it goes over here. I don't know why. Okay, and that will do it. Look at that. Isn't that fun as far as the texture goes? Some of it went in front of my clouds too, but I think that looks good too. But in theory, those are kind of like star formations out in the sky. I don't know why it's in front of the clouds, but I think it looks good in front of the clouds just for textural form. Okay, now that dries really fast. Maybe not this fast, but I'm going to do it now anyway because this is a quick card type of scene that I'm doing. We have to kind of decide which way's up and which way's down, kind of. I mean, you can even do this, where you have the clouds coming from above, like that. It's like an opening in the clouds. Just imagine some clouds are down here, and then you see this open sky in here, and you have some clouds above, right? So don't think that the clouds have to be down here and the sky has to be above. You know, I could have put some clouds up here too, if I wanted to. Could be like this, you know, you have some trees coming around in here. That. And that looks pretty good too, huh? Tree, tree, tree. Huh. They have a different dynamic to it. I think I'm inclined to go with this, right? But just to kind of break my, you know, kind of comfort zone, I'm going to do something that I think would be maybe my second choice or something like that. Let's do this right here. All right, so this is bottom and top, kind of. Okay, now I'm going to create a focal point for this composition, okay? I'm just going to choose this tallest, you know, this highest star up here. So every time I stamp my trees, in terms of this type of tree at least, if you're just doing foliage, you can do it wherever you want, like these, you know, leaves or something like this. You can, doesn't really matter which way they're pointing, because it's not, you know, doesn't have this kind of focal point type of aspect of it. But okay, now I like my black VersaFine ink. Okay, I used to use Marvy all the time. If you have a favorite black pad that's nice and dark, use that, you know. But here's when I'm going back to the focal point, I'm going to have these trees, all these trees that I stamp in here, kind of pointing at that star. You don't have to lay down a ruler or something like that. Just kind of generally just keep that in mind when you're doing this. I mean, I could stamp these vertical too, you know, just like, it would be a different perspective, okay? Not better or worse or anything like that, but just different. When you do it, things like this, when you're working with a focal point, it tends to be more like, you know, lying on the ground, looking up into the, you know, in this case, the night sky. You can do this in the daytime one too. Okay, so I'm changing the height of it, you know, with these different impressions a little bit as well. Okay. So that's how I went here, this one's down here, this one's up there, so I'm using, you know, a little bit more, a little bit less, you know, with each impression, just so it won't look so monotonous in terms of the application of the image. Oops, I moved my tree there, it smeared a little bit, so. This is really juicy and thick ink, but don't worry about that smear, I'll do something about that too. Scenic stamping, doesn't matter. There's always something you can do, because you can run other types of images over the top, which I was going to do anyway. So this is a bare tree right here. I've been using the taller one, but I've been doing like full page scenes too, and half page scenes, you know, where there's a lot of space to work with. On this one right here, there's less space to work with, so all right, let's go like this. Right here, I'm still aiming this. This is a kind of leafless pine right here. Okay. So let's go like that. It just goes for a little bit of a textural difference. See that right there? I don't know, maybe the medium one version of this would look good in here too. Okay. We don't always have to go bare, full, bare, full, bare, full, or something like that, you know, in terms of this leafless one. And like I said, you can use any type of foliage. But if you kind of, you know, if you do this perimeter type of thing, it's more that type of feeling of kind of laying on the ground, looking up at the stars. Kind of, it's a, I don't know, I think it's kind of this romance of the night type of thing, you know, when you're out stargazing, you know, laying back there. It's, I don't know, it tends to be kind of evocative, I feel. Just in terms of the perspective and someone taking the time, you know, to really go out there and just, you know, kick back and lay down. All right, I've been using these eagles, and these eagles are a really fun thing to put into the scene. You can put a bat or something like that, but I don't know. You don't always have to kind of go with some kind of notion of kind of reality. You can just go add something in there for the notion of majesty or feel or whatnot. You can have some kind of solid, you know, this thing kind of, you know, an eagle, a solo eagle. There's something, you know, some kind of emotional kind of aspect to that. You know, this lone figure out there in the great expanse of sky, or you know, or whatnot. Be a good congratulations on a, you know, kind of a graduation type of thing. You know, where they've, you know, they you know, set their sights on the you know, what is it? Shoot for the moon. Something something. You'll land amongst the stars or whatnot. I can do two of them in here. And there's this kind of a certain romance to that. You know, a couple things flying around together like so. I used it for an anniversary type of card. Something about, wouldn't this be great with like a friendships type of I don't know, scenario. You know, just sending a note to a friend. All right, so on these quick card scenes, the idea isn't just to do them and to just, you know, they're quicker because we leave out a bunch of different parts of just a longer scene. The whole idea is just to get, you know, a faster version of it. I'm not going to do a full page 8.5 by 11, you know, for a full page, so they're typically quarter page cards. But anyways, this is the gel pen thing. We have these little white dots in here, and I can add some blue ones. I like adding in these colors. You got to be careful that sometimes if you roll over some of that white paint from the Dr. Martens, it gets lodged in that little roller ball, so we don't want that. And that's what happened there. Alright, that's the blue. Let's go in with the white here. Okay. And sometimes I go for some larger stars, like you can put a dot like that down. Okay. But sometimes you want it a little bit larger, like say down here, maybe I want a little bit of a larger star, just to put kind of an element of lightness within that space. That space down there, otherwise, without that white paint, or at least a couple stars like that, it might look a little boring to me, so see this out here. It doesn't look more kind of interesting from a textural standpoint to have a couple little dots like that. So this is what I was saying. If you get too dark with your toning, oh my gosh, I lost all my stars. Chances are you'll still see the texture underneath it from the use of those star images or Milky Way or whatever you're using. But you can go back in and reclaim some of the lightness with things like this, you know, this little gel pen dot, okay? But from a textural standpoint, I think it looks really good. And last but not least, a lot of us have white pigment ink in our supplies. And okay, I was looking for a dark piece of paper here, scratch paper. Okay, now most of our pads are super sopping juicy wet, okay? So when you ink this up, that's going to be way, way, way too much with most of your pads. We don't want that type of mark on our page, right? That's not what we're going for. So I kind of just, I think I've already used this one before, so I kind of loosened I don't want it this loose. Okay, this has become too frayed now, okay? But this one right here is a little bit tight still, okay? So kind of loosen it up a little bit, okay? And then on just some scratch paper, just kind of blot some of that out as you're removing some of the ink. Now I purposely really inked this up way too much. I should have just tapped in there, but I just wanted to make a point here, because this is what we all do, including me. Because I'll just get along and I'll think, okay, I don't think I tapped very much in there. And I tap too much, and then I'm getting balls of ink everywhere, okay? This is what you want now. There's still a pretty decent amount, but watch this. What I get right here, okay? Look at that. That was 3 taps right there, and it's barely on there, right? That's what you want. You want control over it, okay? And then when I go like that, it creates that little glow. I can still go like that and get a real thick paint, but I can control it by just tapping lighter. A lot of people, what they do is they get, okay, I get that, right? And then they go into it, and they go like 1 tap, 2 taps. I can't see anything. Boom, tap, blob, right? So just kind of stay with it a little bit. I mean, it doesn't take long, you know, even if you have to tap it 10 times. See that right there? Let me see how many I go through here. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay? 15 little taps for that little glow there. But look how effective it is. It looks like it's really glowing because I didn't put a big glob of it. It becomes really thin and translucent, okay? Now see, if I want that glow to kind of spread out, then I just kind of stay there a little bit longer, and I'm moving this around a little bit. But look at that glow there around that star. Oops. Get that focus in there. Yeah, see how effective that is? It looks like a little light in your scene kind of coming out, right? Don't those look like little pinholes of light shining through? I mean, this is a really effective, easy type of little technique. Some people say, hey, I can't get that. It's because they're just using too much ink on there. And I know what they mean, too, because all of our pads are really super juicy. Unless you're just someone that's embossing all the time with that white pad. Okay, but here's all those little dots in there. We have a full range of texture, a full range of value, light to dark, a pretty good range of intensity. You know, it's pretty bright in here, but there are some duller areas, okay? But certainly some brighter tones in there. And then again, it's from that use of multiple layers of transparent colors laid down there, okay? But look at that. Versifying black on the imagery right in here. And if you have it, you know, that splatter painting like that looks really good. But I don't do that on every scene. It just works good for, you know, if you're doing this kind of overall, you know, texturing on here. I could do it with a white gel pen and just add dots, you know, around here. This just gives me this kind of a little bit more of a random application of kind of like a spray pattern or whatnot with some really thin ones. But you don't have to have that. You can just put on a few dots. This is really inexpensive, by the way, and it lasts you like 20 years or something like that. It'd probably last me for a year if I even used it like, you know, daily or something like that, but I don't. But a little bit of pigment ink on these areas like that, and look at that color glow right there, and that little pigment ink application there. You know, to do all those stars like that, I don't know. I could probably do it in 1 minute or something like that. You know, just tap a little Q-tip in there. Everyone has these, right? A little tap like that, you know, and you could put that in there. And, I don't know, it really changes the spirit of the piece by having that kind of softer little aspect. They look like little soft little balls of light against all this crisp imagery. So it's a little bit more effective from a textural standpoint than you would think, because it creates so much contrast from that textural standpoint. And look how fast this scene came together, you know. And I think it's really full and complete in terms of having a lot of the same elements of a much, you know, more kind of involved piece. Now on these ones right here I used more ink, okay? And of course they're just bigger. But, you know, as far as a visual statement goes, pretty easy to do. Okay, so just in recap, just remember, you know, if you're going to do this one, just to retain some of those lighter areas in there. Now this one right here got much darker, okay? So I didn't leave some of these stars quite so light. And I've left that little cloud down there a little bit lighter. But this one, I retained some lighter areas in here. This one right here, I really wanted to get dark because I knew I was going to do all that kind of splatter painting with the Dr. Martin's Bleed Proof White. But on this one right here, I just retained a little bit more of the lighter areas because I don't want to spend so much time going back in and, you know, kind of adding some additional forms with this right here, because this had to be a little bit faster. So anyways, fun stuff. Hope you enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, drop me a note in the comment section. If you like the video, maybe you like, share, and subscribe to the channel.